Let's go inside that stunning news over the weekend. News that could change Russia, topple its president, and help end Russia's bloody invasion of Ukraine. Haven't seen anything like this fast for years. I'm talking about the armed revolt against Russian President Vladimir Putin and the mysterious way it suddenly ended. Now let's go through what happened, because this really shows how weak and cowardly Putin is and how his regime and his invasion total shambles. Now this revolt or attempted coup or whatever you want to call it was led by this man, former restaurateur Yevgeny Prigozhin, when he sent his private Russian army called the Wagner Group, that's been doing Putin's dirty work in Syria and Asia, Africa and Ukraine. He sent it hurtling up the road from the Ukrainian front to Moscow on Saturday. Now, Prigozhin wasn't out to replace Putin, or not yet. He wanted instead to replace the defence minister and the top generals that he said were starving his 25,000 private soldiers of ammunition. And, by the way, more important to him, I think, the army was trying to take over his private soldiers, sign them up to the army instead of him. Now, Prigozhin told Russians quite openly that their generals were losing the war in Ukraine. He said Ukrainian soldiers in this counter-offensive were advancing and could push the Russians right back to the border and beyond.
Несем сейчас серьезные потери. Я абсолютно в этом уверен. Мы сейчас наверняка лишимся части территорий, и это часть территорий Российской Федерации.
So off he went, this march on Moscow. Well, his Wagner group met almost no resistance when it first took over the southern Russian city of Rostov-on-Don. Took over the Russian defence headquarters there that's in charge of all military operations in Ukraine. They then went north and took over the city of Vorozhnev, halfway to Moscow, shot down some Russian helicopters, kept going to within 200 kilometres of Moscow, where Putin had, panicked, called out the troops to defend his capital. In fact, on Saturday morning, Putin went on national TV and promised terrible revenge on the mutineers.
This is treason in the face of those who are fighting on the front. This is a stab in the back of our troops and the people of Russia. These people who are responsible will certainly be brought to justice on behalf of our people, and the punishment for this monstrous activity will be very harsh.
In fact, Putin isn't going to punish them at all because he's too weak to do it. Just 4 hours after he said that terrible punishment, he made a deal with Prigozhin. If Prigozhin called off his revolt, went into exile in Belarus, he and his Wagner group, they wouldn't be punished at all. Prigozhin agreed to the deal and left Rostov-on-Don to the cheers and the applause of locals there, another sign of Putin's weakness.
Yevgeny Prigozhin, presumably en route to Belarus, waved off to cheers in Rostov last night.
Of course, Prigozhin probably agreed to this deal, I'm guessing here, because not enough Russian troops had defected to his side. But very few had resisted his march on Moscow either. But here's another thing. Putin looks terrible. How gutless does he look? I mean, while soldiers scrambled in Moscow to defend him and his regime, his private plane on Saturday was tracked, leaving the capital to fly towards St. Petersburg. Now, Putin hasn't been seen in public since. Now, you contrast that to Ukraine's president, who when Russian troops last year advanced on its capital, when it was dropping bombs on his capital, he reportedly refused an American offer to fly him to safety. He said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. And later filmed himself and his top aides in the streets of his own capital to show that he hadn't fled. Not like Putin. That's balls. Putin has none.